And if everyone is ready to begin, I think we should start. So, today in this demonstration, we're going to be presenting to you the project management side of Financials for Office 365. Financials, of course, is the accounting software solution within the Office 365 suite. So what we do is we interact with the other programs and we're independent, and we're going to show you the functionality in regards to job costing today. As you may well know, there are various ways you can access the Financials for Office 365 functionality. It could be through the web experience, which we will be demonstrating through today, as well as the Office 365 experience, where you are within the Office 365 suite, and the tablet experience itself, where you can be using it on an iPad, Surface, or even Android devices. So, what is the agenda for today? Today I'll give you an introduction into the concepts of job costing within Financials for Office 365, as well as provide an illustration of the task management and the planning management within our job costing module. Then we'll elaborate on the specific concepts and functions that you can see there. So what we have there as well is what we call work in progress tracking. And on top of that, there is the functionality for what we call timesheet and resource management. So to make sure that everyone can see, we're now checking one last time before we head into the demonstration that everyone can see the screen. If you're unable to see the screen through the additional link or the webinar, please leave a message in the message board. Also through the demonstration, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the message board. And at the end, at the attendee Q&A, we'll try to address anyone we can. And if we can't address one today, we'll try and send you an email personally. Okay, great. So let's begin. So what is job costing in Financials for Office 365? Job costing supports common project management tasks, such as configuring a job and scheduling a resource within a job, as well as providing the information to manage budgets and monitor progress. So the jobs area in Financials for Office 365 supports common project management tasks. With the jobs feature, you can manage long-term projects that involve the use of man hours, machine hours, inventory items, as well as other types of usage, general ledger expenses, and then these are all items that you want to track and essentially track the usage of. So the first stage of anything within financials, of course, is setting it up. So what are the steps that we should take when setting up a job? The first layer within a job is what we call the task lines. The second layer within that is what we call the planning lines. Oh, seems that we have a couple people hopping in and out. Please, if you have an issue with the sound or the picture and you are on the webinar, try logging in and out. If it's with the picture itself, also try just using that additional link that Alvin's sending through. Now, using the jobs functionality will provide a good overview not only of individual jobs, but also the allocation of these employees, machinery, and other resources being used in all projects. You can also track this functionality for many types of services and consultancy tasks. Now, the job task lines specifies how to set up your planning information, as well as allows the user to provide a project with consolidation points and structure. So what might that look like? What you're seeing now is the typical example of a job task list. As you might see if you were attended last week's webinar at the Lunch and Learn on Friday, it is quite similar to the same way that Financials for Office 365 structures our chart of accounts. Basically the same layout as an Excel spreadsheet. You have specific columns the unit identifies as tasks or accounts in the chart of accounts, as well as the ability to have those consolidation amounts. These are the posting accounts. These are the ones where we enter that planning information, the allocation of resources, resale items, as well as general expenses. And what these highlighted accounts are the consolidation accounts. But where's that sophistication behind the system? So that's in what we call job planning lines. So you use the window to open and plan items, resources, and general ledger expenses that you expect to use on a job. So this is the budgeting aspect. And within financials for Office 365, we call this scheduling. Or you can specify the agreed payment amount for your customer that he or she should pay for the job. Now that's contracting. So what can we take from these two aspects, scheduling and contracting? It is actually functional within the system to be able to account for both times and material costing and prices of a job, as well as fixed costing for jobs. But of course, we don't want to kill this with PowerPoint, so let's have a look of the program itself. So, those familiar with Financials for Office 365 will know this is the role center, the dashboard of our program. So let's hop into the job costing section. Now, the first thing to illustrate, of course, is the job card. So the job card illustrates the specific sections of information that we might want to incorporate. The general information, of course, the customer's address, the people responsible or incorporating this or overviewing the project, the posting that is incorporated within a job, as well as being able to allocate statuses. You can as well incorporate duration, so to account for a starting and ending date periods, as well as that one tag to show that creation date. Now, if this job is occurring in an overseas or a foreign country, you can even incorporate the financial management aspect of multi-currencies, as well as incorporating spot exchange rates and invoice currency codes. So if you have a currency that the system is running for the job, separate to the invoicing currency that you want to give to your customer. Now we have this plus what we call work in progress tracking. So during the demonstration today, I'll be hopefully able to show you that quickly, easy use of functionality to incorporate that sort of detail into the system. But of course, this is just the general information. So, as we mentioned in those slides earlier, we need to see the task line. So let's have a look at that. So what you're seeing right now is the task line structure of a project that we wish to use. This one is a Financials Go Live in Office 365 implementation. So what we can do for this is just structuring, usually in a progressive way, how we would run through a project. Now, all jobs that you create can be separated into task lines, as you see here, and on top of that, planning lines. And this enables you to divide the job into smaller tasks, and therefore use more specific details in the budgeting, quoting, and registration of your job. Okay, now, this table illustrates the sequence of tasks with links to topics that describe them. These tasks are listed in an order so that they are generally performed. So what you're seeing here is, just, let's say, the general progression of it. Now, one piece of powerful functionality with our job and project management module is the ease of use of bringing it over to another one. So any job that you run in the system, whether it is halfway through progression or if it has been completed or it hasn't even been sent out yet, can be utilized as a template. So how might that work? Because that could seem very complicated. So what we can do right now, from just this on its own, within the card, we can actually drag over planning lines from other jobs and bring them into this job, or even use planning lines from this job to send them out to others. But that's not what I want to do right now. So let's hop back a page to our list page. And what I want to do is just use that job that we were just in and create another. Let's do that. And let's call it the Financials Lunch and Learn. We can set this to a different customer than the one that we originally utilized, and we can even incorporate specific sections. So you don't have to copy the entire thing in one go. You can copy it section by section if you want to, and you can even choose to bring over the usage that has been incorporated in that job. So for this copy, we'll just bring over the prices, the quantities, and of course the dimensions. And it happened that quick. So right there, I have a new job ready to be used straight away. And while that powerful piece of functionality is great, you always need more than that. So let's hop into an already created job and see the actual planning lines that we incorporate in the system. So while we do have the task lines illustrating the task structure of our job, we also have the planning lines behind that. Now, in this window, you can specify the tasks involved in a job. To start planning a job or to post usage for the project, you must set up at least one task. So these are allocated to specific tasks within the job, as you can see. Now, here we're utilizing both schedule and contracting ones. So this actual job here is illustrating what we call the fixed price. So as you can see, we have multiple schedules being made, multiple budgeted entries, and then a specific contracted planning line to account for that periodic aspect of the billing. Now, while the planning lines are illustrating that information, we need to see them interacting with our task lines. So let's have a look at that. So now that we have our planning lines and our task lines working together, we can see the progress of this job itself, the start and end dates being populated, as well as the scheduled usage and contracted amounts for this job. From here we get an idea of that separation between budget, contracted actuals, and the progression through the actual stages of this job. As you might see, we progressed through quite a bit. But then on top of that, we also want to incorporate that times and materials aspect. So let's hop into another job. Let's hop into the Australian set example job. So within this project, what we've done is we've gone for that separation of contract and scheduled amounts. This is still times and material, mind you. Throughout this actual job, all I'd have to do is select a specific account, and I can see the specific planning lines for that account itself. Here we've got a budget for meeting our customer. And here we have the scheduled and contracted amounts for invoicing for the inventory within this project. As you can see here, we're utilizing both resources, resale items, and text just to give that extra level of detail. Now, while visualizing all this information, by using the same structure that we have within our chart of accounts, we can see the consolidated amounts and the separation between our scheduled amounts and our contracted amounts, of course, as well as our progression through the usage amounts. As you might notice there, our usage amounts in this account have gone over our scheduled amounts. And we've progressed to this one stage here now. But how can we account for that difference between those amounts? Now, we do that through variance and progress claim amounts, of course. But of course, this isn't a good report. This isn't a good form of analysis. So how can you analyze the information that we're seeing here? To be able to analyze the information as a whole, we use this function called the statistics, the job statistics. Within here, we can see the scheduled usage and contracted amounts separated by resource, item, GL count, and then of course the total. What this is giving us is the total amount of the job separated by the specific information we need, and each one of these accounts, of course, is still drillable. So I've now drilled down onto the budgets for the inventory within our job. Of course, that brings up the entries, just as we want. But we want to go further than that. We don't want to just account for that on its information alone, because many programs out there, while not so dynamically, still can account for that information. So how can we add that extra level of analysis? All we need to do is hop into the task lines, choose a specific task, and we can view the statistics of that task on its own. So what I'm doing now is I'm viewing the specific statistics in regards to this resource being utilized here in this one specific task or section of our project, say. Now, while that's showing me the scheduled amounts, the usage amounts, contracted amounts, and once we finish this job, the invoiced amounts. we can go another step further. So instead of just bringing up this one account on its own, as you can see here, what we can do is just select the account below, and because this is a consolidation task, I'm now visualizing the statistics of the whole section. So you can take that to such a high level of detail in how you analyze and report on your job costing and project management. So in all, the window provides an overview of the financial status and usage of your job or project. And this then lets you compare the actual usage of the job with the scheduled usage. So what about two big takeaways from this functionality of just the structuring that we apply to our projects? That the job costing accounts for your project can extensively save you time just by that copy and paste functionality. Even the reports, all it took was a moment, and that quickly we were able to delve into bringing up that high level of detail within the system. The templates are highly repeatable, as you saw there. All I had to do was copy, and you can then just bring it over to a different one. Now, it's important to note that budgets can be copied and then modified, so you could have multiple budgets for the same project. That way, incorporating as many different scenarios as you'd like to apply. You could have multiple job cards for a project just to have that different level of detail. Progressing through, it's just that easy. So, the times and materials aspect of job costing. Through this project, we can apply that the task lines are equally matched with the budget and contracted amounts. How can you do that? Because right now this all looks like it's all separated, doesn't it? Now the way that we do that is that we actually include line types of both contracting and scheduling. You might ask, what is that, Christopher? That is just allowing for the detail to be entered with a smaller amount of information. So essentially, that just leads to us having less manual entry within our jobs, which is always a huge factor with projects. And of course, the fixed pricing. Now, a huge factor of fixed pricing is the aspect of milestone payments and the variation of overheads to be accounted for within the project itself. So how can we do that? This last example here illustrates that through its own task lines. So what we've done here is we've structured a project the way that many consulting firms go about it. All they've done is budgeted the amounts and usage of a resource by a periodic basis. As you can see here, we have scheduled amounts for this job. What are those amounts? Let's hop in and have a look. Now, as you can see, on a day-by-day basis, we're accounting for the budgeting amounts for this resource. Mary, one of our consultants, 6 hours a day, incorporating the unit costs and the unit prices, and we're budgeting for that. Now, as we progress through the project, what we have here is roll-ups. So we have progress claims occurring for this job as it goes along. You can see that here through the separation of our usage. So these are the budgeted amounts of price and cost. Down here we have the actual contracted amounts being entered in. All these projects are being made to be as clear as possible. And of course, when it comes to usage, we want to account for the difference between the two. And that's where we go for our variation accounts. Now you might say, Chris, what if I have a massive project that is very long? As you can see, I've been able to easily navigate through it. But on top of that, because we have such a high level of connectivity with the other Office 365 programs, I can send out this project to my Excel document, visualize it that way, and even dispense it. Very clear, isn't it? That's the exact project we were just in. And on top of that, you do still have that universal search function, even within a job task lines, to be able to bring up specifics. Now this is just a quick look of the structuring functionality that we have within job costing and project management. But what is the next stage on top of this? And that, of course, is being able to have a dynamic way to account for the progress that has been incorporated for a job. And how do we go about that? Now, if you've been paying attention to the screen more than listening to me, you might have noticed during the entire presentation that up on the top here we got this term WIP. Now what that is the work in progress being accounted for. And how do they go about it? So there are various job work in progress methods, how we account for the progress we have gone through a job. Now this doesn't have to be utilized within your job costing. Project management doesn't necessarily require work in progress methods. But in case if you're doing that within your system right now, you still have that functionality here. Now it's important to note these are stock standard industry ways of accounting for work in progress. You still have the functionality to add your own. What do each one of these pieces of work in progress tracking mean? So work in progress tracking, what is it? Completed contracts. So you can account for it as a fixed costing aspect, sorry. So you can account for the revenues and the costs at the end of the project. So you can account for it the same way with your work in progress. Cost of sales, you can incorporate the cost that it took to bring in the sales as a percentage aspect of your progress within a job. Cost and sales value. So you can incorporate the progress you've gone through as this percentage of revenue against the total percentage of revenue. And that would be through your scheduled and budgeted amounts, of course. And that's just showing the progress you've made through the system. Now you have the option for both, cost or sales value. And of course, there's just the time aspect, the usage of resources, sales, and even the way that you've progressed through the task lines. And that can be accounted for as a percentage of completion. So these are the various ways that we can incorporate work in progress tracking within the system. But of course, it's always better to visualize it. So you may be saying, Chris, all that information is great, but wouldn't it take forever to delve into and to grab that information from the system? To that, my answer is not really. All you have to do is go to the work in progress. After setting in the card there, the way you wish to calculate it, set the specific date you want to calculate it to. Now this is working off the system's current working day. It is always important to note that it can be different from what today is. So within the system, you're able to set the working date different than the actual day it is. Let's just set it for today, say. Apply document number, of course, so you can account for this calculation of work in progress. Set it specific to this job. Let's select OK. So what the system is now doing is just working out my work in progress. Now, it is important to note I've set it up so that it works it out straight away. So we've now accounted for the work in progress usage throughout the entire project. And look at that, completed. It's now working it out in accordance to that point there. Very good. And we can visualize that through this entry here. Now this is just how you can schedule the usage of your company's resources and keep track of those various costs associated with the usage of resources on a specific project. Naturally, jobs involve the ongoing consumption of employees' hours, machine hours, inventory usage. So that has to be tracked as a job progress, and that's what the work in progress allows us to do. Now it is important to note, now this is very important, if a job runs over a long period, you may want to transfer these costs to a work in progress account itself on your balance sheet while the job is being completed. Now that might be for organizations that have projects that run for, say, 6 months, a year. It's just so you can have that real-time illustration of the progress that you've been able to gain from that project, translate it straight to your balance sheet. That's just allowing you so that you can recognize the cost and sales in your income statement as well, and various accounts where it is appropriate. So that's just another one of the tools that we have within the system to give that dynamic analysis in regards to our project management. But what is the other important factor in there? So let's hop back into the job card. Yes, we can account for a very dynamic way to analyze the progress by analyzing the stages that we've gone through by various different lots of methods, as you can see from our work in progress methods. And on top of that, you can have job-specific pricing for your resources, GL expenses, and your inventory. We can even give you that high level of detail to account for within project management. But what's the other aspect that's always important to people that are incorporating resources into a job? And that, of course, is the actual allocation of those resources, that ease of use and the navigation of their usage. Now, while we can do that on an accounting basis just easily as you saw there, the main question that I always receive in job costing demonstrations is, how can I have that easily entered into the system? How can I just have that ease of use? So we incorporate that in what we call resource planning. So resource planning has various different aspects they can use within the system. It has resource capacities, accounting for the maximum usage you want to use that resource for, and availability. So you can even have the availability of a resource when it hasn't been utilized for those capacities. Now, it is important to note that a resource can be any aspect. It can be a specific person within your organization. It can be a piece of machinery within your organization, or a piece of equipment. It can even be a general term, such as general labor, that you want to incorporate within to your project management. So we don't have to go to as far detail or as general as you like, but you have the option for everything. Now on top of that, we even allocate for even more detail within our resources. You can actually apply skills and allocation based off those skills. You can have resources that are preferred for a specific job based off these skills. And you can even incorporate for resource usage. So you have that way to effectively manage your resources within your company. Now, it is important to note that resource planning isn't restricted to job costing. You can use resource management based on production as well as project planning on the availability and capacity of those resources. Resources can be included in your bill of materials when using production items or assembly items, which we'll discuss in those modules, as well as job planning and job costing. One last note on that is that resources can be integrated with your general ledger, but we'll get into that later. And the last one that is always very important and has been a very big point of discussion is the resource management through timesheets. So luckily today we'll give you an illustration of that functionality. So let's go back into the program. So where might we be able to find a specific resource card here? I think a good one to always start off with would be the person in charge. So just by clicking on that person right there, I'm able to bring up the resource card list page. Let's hop into one of these and just have a look at the specifics about resource planning. Now I know we're going through a lot of information, so if you're having an information overload from this demonstration, please feel free to ask questions within the message board. It's always important that we get feedback from our attendees because you guys are the ones in these industries. We're just showing you how you can use this functionality to efficiently account for it. So what we have here is just what we call the resource card. As you can see, a resource card can be straight away given a type, person or machine, as well as being given the usage of timesheets. We'll go into that aspect in a sec. You can apply specific invoicing details for services, even apply GSTs to them, unit costs, calculations, as well as apply this personal data of a resource if need be. So what was one of the bits of information I said there that was really important? And of course, that's how we navigate with our resources. That's how we plan for our resources. Now, while we have this all this information being able to be applied to a resource. This is what we want to focus on today. So resource availability can be analyzed from a dynamic table, essentially your calendar. I've set this one specifically to be a month-by-month basis. Now through here, you can see the capacity that this resource has. Yes, I know, I haven't been allocating my resource to a lot of jobs. This is a demo database, and still haven't seen how good she is. So we've got her on order there. Of course, then we're able to see how many available hours she has after that. But that's not enough. Let's try and get a bit more detail there. So not only be able to view this dynamic page by month, you're able to view it by days, weeks, quarters, periods set by you. Let's hop in there and have a look at it on a day-by-day basis. As you can see, I've even gone a bit further than allocating someone to what they're supposed to be. I've allocated someone based on a job more than what they're supposed to be. I've got her here for 8 hours not being utilized, or on this day as well. While here, on Saturday, she can have it that they're not supposed to be used at all. So we have that dynamic way of being able to allocate resources and be able to visualize, I guess, their availability from other projects. Now, if you want an overview page, we have what we call the resource capacity page. So I've only set it up that we have 5 resources available to me. Of course, one is a piece of equipment, and the other ones are individuals within my organization. So from here, we can actually see the resource capacity. Right now, I've set it to quarter. Let's go by week. So you have that dynamic way of just changing how you're visualizing the information. So we want to see as much detail as we want to get out of that system. Even from here, I could just select a line and then drill down to an actual resource card itself. Now you can have dynamic costing and pricing for resources. But it's always important that we have the ability to easily set the capacities and analyze their availability based off that capacity. But of course, that's just the detail on how we account for the resource. Having that powerful level of dynamic information stored into the system. Having specific skills and making sure that that assigns them to specific groups or specific jobs. But what is the most important feature here that we're always inquired about? And that, of course, is timesheeting. So naturally, of course, you have to be the specific user of a resource to create timesheets. We don't want people creating too many timesheets for too many people. So what we have here is a dynamic way just to enter in the timesheets. I'm just going to enter it in like so, set it for, let's say, 2 periods. Now, what is it telling me right now? It's actually telling me that because today isn't a Monday, I can't create one. And that's because we're trying to do it on a week-by-week basis. So you might say, oh, well, it's the Monday. Of course, clicking on the triple zeros, triple dots gives us that dynamic look of a calendar. And there's our error gone. Now, naturally, I want to be making this one for a specific resource, but you do have the functionality to be able to create timesheets for various resources at once, whether it be by their actual machine types or any one of these details here. You can create timesheets for multiple people. But I want to go even further into the functionality that we have within timesheets. So, as I've already created some projects that utilize Mary within this period that I'm creating here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually have lines automatically created based off those projects. And just like that, I've created 2 timesheets ready to go. So let's go even further. Let's have a look at those timesheets. Right now I'm utilizing the universal search function. This gives you access to the entire system, of course what you have permission to touch, within any page. So you have a universal search function that not only brings up the options based off what you've typed, but also splits them based off the specific type of info of page you're trying to drill down to. So let's go into the timesheets. Now, let's hop into one and just have a look at what Chris created. So, based off the specifics of what I had there, I've now created a couple lines purely off the periods that we incorporated within this job. And what you can do is you can account for these lines base by base, the usage there. So let's say I took up 6 hours to travel, even though it was 10 on Monday. You can have that dynamic way of having a table for a timesheet. And of course, as we go along, that incorporates the information into the statistics. And we even have activity details. So I can drill down, let's say, to this specific line and view where I got that information from. Here it is, that specific task. All I have to do is click the ellipsis button or the triple dots, see full list, and from here I have the task lines of the project. So you have that ease of navigation still within the system to be able to hop around and see the information you want to see without having to hop out and then hop in. It is important to note that we can add extra levels of detail to what you're entering into this timesheet. A specific work code, so it could be that I traveled. So let's try and incorporate it by kilometers. Now what's it telling me? It's telling me that, of course, the kilometers can't be charged into a timesheet. So that'll go to a GL account, of course, and general expenses. So let's get rid of that. There it is. And of course, there's one more thing to incorporate, and that is whether or not the time that's been allocated to this timesheet is chargeable to a customer. Now, what we've been able to see there is how we can dynamically bring in timesheets from planning lines. But one big thing is that we're always asked is, so if I created a timesheet, can I take that information and throw it into a project? With Financials for Office 365, the answer to that is yes. So let's have a look at that. Where is that done? All I have to do is press search and I can show you. Now that is done in the job journal. Just like every other module, we have a journal for our jobs. So what this job journal allows me to do not only is to calculate the remaining usage based off what we have in projects, but I can actually grab the lines and have them suggested from the timesheets. And we can dynamically choose it to specific filters of resources and starting dates. So you have that ease of use when processing and posting the usage of jobs and timesheets. So that's just a dynamic way that we can have information from both sides there. You can get a timesheet and grab the specifics that you want within that timesheet from a project. Or if you have a project that you want to populate with the information from, let's say, a timesheet, you can do that as well. So it gives you that functionality at both ends of the spectrum. Now, it is important to note that these timesheets, they don't have to be job specific. What we've done today is I've hopped into one job and created lines in a timesheet for that one job. But as you can see here, by just selecting back, a timesheet can be set to any specific job. How can I show you that? Let's go to choose columns. So what I've done is I've only illustrated the weekdays. But on top of that, we can illustrate the specific job number and task number. So it can be that we have a timesheet that reaches over to multiple jobs and multiple projects to illustrate that employee's usage. Now, how can this happen with it on a regular basis? You might say, oh, I've now got this, and I don't know if this is going to actually be illustrating the most relevant information. So the way that we go about that is, of course, just copying those lines. And what the copy function can still do is it can override. You can have it add, or you can have it replace the entries within the system, within the timesheet, sorry, not the system. It's already in the system. And with our timesheet functionality, we even have an approvals process. So this timesheet for just 10 hours of travel that I've incorporated here, I could submit. And then you could actually have a user in place to manage the timesheets. As you can see there, I've got a manage timesheets function as well as being able to manage timesheets by job. So it's giving you all the various options to be able to account for timesheeting that you might want to be able to account for it. At this point, we haven't found any instances where we have great deficiencies within project management. The only in regards to functionality, while we have this dynamic analysis and reporting of our job costing, of course, the only place where we fall down in regards to functionality. We'll be able to visualize it. We're not giving you an illustration of this because we take care of that already in the information, the functionality and the capability within the system. You already have a dynamic resource availability chart illustrating this resource's usage, as well as within a job itself, with task lines and planning lines illustrating that specific level of functionality in regards to planning and accounting for a job, task by task. So what can we take away from resources? The fact that you can easily access the availability of your resources, whether they be personnel, general labor accounts, or even just machinery or equipment within your system. And you can optimize their allocation to projects and maximize their efficiency. And of course, as we've been able to see, we can incorporate timesheet management at either end of the project management fence, from the jobs themselves or from the timesheets. So I hope today's been able to give you a good illustration of the job costing within Financials for Office 365. So, Alvin, this is now our Q&A time with our attendees. From the message board, do we have any questions that we can answer today? Let's hear the questions.
Hey, Chris, we have a lot of questions actually.
Of course we do. It's a great module.
So one of the first things going back to the beginning is really explaining the difference between schedule, usage, and contract amounts.
That's a very good question. So, just to reiterate, a scheduled amount is in essence your budget, and your contracted amount is an agreed upon amount that you have with your customer. So that is essentially an amount that's definite. And a good way of visualizing that in your head is sort of scheduled and budgeted amount is times and materials aspects. A contracted amount is a fixed aspect of contracting. Now, of course, when I'm describing things, I'm always getting a bit lost in the functionality. So in the system itself, all you'd have to do is press that help function there. And what that would do, that takes us into a specific aspect that can actually show us the difference with a help page, showing us that planning lines can either be a contract, both schedule and contract amount, that used for invoicing, and a scheduled amount if that amount is non-chargeable. So just to reiterate, scheduled accounts are budget accounts, while contracted accounts are the ones we used for invoicing. So it's just having separated accounts for the comparison between your budgets and your invoicing amounts, just so you can have like that ease of use in the structure and the hierarchy. I know I kind of gave a long-winded answer for that, but hopefully that gives a bit of an illustration into the difference between the two. If you need additional information, we'll try to send out documentation to you. What's the next question, Alvin?
So another question is in regards to timesheets. Can you start off on a different day than say Monday? Can you start off on, say if the work week for a company starts on Tuesday or Thursday? Is that changeable?
The periods I just set supposed to be illustrating, I guess, the whole period of a week. So within a timesheet, it's not necessarily illustrating that person's work week. As you could see through the actual timesheet itself, I'll just hop back in there. You can also incorporate not only the usual work week, Monday to Friday, but you can also incorporate Saturday and Sunday as well. So this is not necessarily illustrating that person's work week, but really the period. So that specific week itself to illustrate their timesheets. So I'll have a look into that in regards to setup and development, whether or not we want to have that sort of functionality. I do believe that it's there. I'll just try and check that if we can change the usual work weeks. From what I understand, it's just a Microsoft standard to have it from Mondays to Saturdays or
Okay.
Fridays.
Another question that came up is there an automatic warning if you over allocate resources, like if you make Mary work more hours than she's allotted?
The usual way that a resource planner will have that, as we're in the administration role center, you can't exactly visualize it. But what we have in there is what we call a dispatch board. So not only can we incorporate, let's say, resource usage, but what we can also do is incorporate the planning aspect, and that's in a function called demand overview and order promising. There isn't actually a prompt when you over allocate a resource than its capacity, and that's purely because naturally resources such as individuals work over their hours. I myself, I don't think I've had too many days where I actually leave at 5 p.m. But it's just more of them accounting for that aspect. So there isn't actually a prompt, but within the resource card you can see that they've overstepped their capacity.
Okay. Another one from Carrie is, can you import timesheets from Excel and can you account for retentions automatically or perhaps use the variations functionality?
For retentions, we do try and utilize the variations functionality. The retentions is a industry standard where it straight away illustrates, I guess, yep, that usage. But no, we don't have that. We try to utilize progress claims or milestone payments, and then we try and incorporate the variations. But Kerry, I'll try and send you over some documentation. You've interacted with us a couple of times, and we love being able to send you that information directly. I've also got Rocco, who's got specific information about retention. So thank you for that question.
Marcus made a good point. So when he was talking about resources, he also meant machinery, like machinery can't go over capacity.
Hmm.
So it can't really do overtime.
Yeah, that is a good point. So, from what I understand, yep, the way that we visualize it is the resource card. That is a very good point. That yep, machinery can't go over capacity.
Um, let's see. If you guys want to unmute your mics, you're also welcome to just talk and ask questions.
We are definitely getting more questions this time than usual. I love it. So a good way
So,
that it's visualized is that within what we call the resource statistics year-to-date details. So right here, you have the specific capacity for a resource in this time, and then you can actually see the unused capacity and then the actual usage capacity. So what we have here is just that separation. Say it might be a capacity of 8 hours a day, and the unused capacity, if it is -8 like that, is showing that I'm overusing my resource. So we don't have a prompt, but we have that fact box functionality illustrating the overusage.
okay. Another question that came up was in regards to planning. Can you set up a weekly plan for your employees with different jobs and projects and then email it to them?
Yeah, so let's hop in to timesheet. That's a very good question. It's a very clever way about going about it too.
And if so, is it updatable, changeable?
Okay, so the usual process, as we said, is that there is actually an approvals process. So let's say for this one, I submit it. I want to throw in all lines. Now let's hop into the manage section. I'm not 100% sure actually if there is an automatic function for that. Let's have a peek. We have found that the way most people go about it is that they use the open in Excel functionality. So they'll hop into a timesheet, bring up that timesheet's details, throw it into Excel, and then send it out. But it does not look like yet we have that automatic functionality to email it out to employees. So we'll have a look into that for you.
Thanks for that question, Marcus.
Yeah, that was a very good question.
Um, I think that's it at the moment. If any questions weren't answered, just let us know.
So It is also important to note with the resource planning aspect that you can archive timesheets. So we've got
Uh,
another question.
can you import and export to and from a project?
Hi Marcus, so when you say import,
MS
MSS projects,
projects,
yes,
yeah.
that's a very good question. We actually had an inquiry about that a couple of weeks ago. So within the market, there are various actual connectors. So that it is important to note that, yep, there is actually baseline connectors from Financials for Office 365 in the market, and then be able to send that to MS projects. Marcus, if you provide Alvin with your uh, email address, we'll be able to send that information out to you. They're made up specific how-to videos and walkthroughs about that specific connector. There are quite a few out there in the industry, but yeah, that functionality is out there.
Yeah, so it's about one, everyone, so we'll just leave it there. We know everyone's in time pressure, so if you do have any more questions, feel free to email us those questions and we'll get answered to you sometime in the week.
Thank you very much, everyone. And it is important to note that this is one of our ongoing things, these Lunch and Learn webinars. So your questions are a huge factor to that. Now, just for a preview of next week, what we will be covering is financial reporting. Now, this is one of Financials for Office 365's most powerful pieces of functionality. I'll be able to show you how we can dynamically produce reports, analysis reports, and even have that form of powerful reporting working outside of the systems. So through add-ons that comes with Financials for Office 365. Great. So thank you very much for your time, everyone, and I hope you have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.